All right. Hello, everyone. Good morning or afternoon or evening or middle of the night or whatever time it might be, wherever you are in the world right now. Thank you so much for joining us here today. We are super excited to be giving you guys an opportunity to learn more about the MBA admissions process. And what we're going to do with this session is we're going to do quick profile reviews of a couple of brave folks who have sent along their profiles. And the benefit to you guys who aren't on this profile review is that if you listen to some of the feedback and some of the dialogue that we have, you may find that a lot of this is actually applicable to your background as well. So that's why we do these. So super quick, just to quickly introduce myself. My name is Maria Wich-Vila. I'm a 2005 graduate of Harvard Business School, and I am the founder of ApplicantLab.com, which is an online platform that gives you great admissions advice for a small fraction of the cost of traditional admissions consulting. I am currently in my 17th year of giving admissions advice, and so if you can't afford a traditional admissions consultant, check out ApplicantLab.com, please. Okay, so now with that introduction of me out of the way, we are going to have, I wonder if I can move these little boxes around. Oh, I can move the boxes around. Check this out. So I'm going to put you guys in the order in which we're going to be discussing your backgrounds. So first off, we've got Aman. So Aman, if you could just quickly introduce yourself, your sort of background and your experience, and which MBAs you want to go to and that stuff. That would be great.
Hi, everyone. Happy to be here today in this session. So I am from New Delhi and my name is Aman Tomar. I am from engineering background. I'm a 2015 IIT Guwahati graduate. And post IIT, I think I've mostly been working with consumer tech companies. Have been with 3 different startups: Flipkart, Revigo, and Oyo, and have been progressing since as an analyst to project management and P&L handling roles in these different companies. So my major post MBA goal is management consulting, and I am targeting Kellogg and MIT Sloan as 2 of the top programs. Yeah, that's what about me, and happy to be here again and happy to be helping you guys.
Okay, excellent. Thank you so much, Aman. So it looks to me, sort of, if I glance at your resume, it seems like a lot of your experience so far has been in supply chain. Would you say certainly at your first employer, you were designing the supply chain, and then but then after you were an analyst in supply chain, after that you were the assistant manager for Flipkart's private label brand. Do you mind explaining that to me? What that was?
Sure. So just like at Amazon, Amazon has an Amazon Basics, which is basically they market those products, and they're a private label of Amazon, and that's where they try to collaborate with the manufacturers, and also sometimes they directly don't create a brand out of the products. We were trying to do a very similar thing, and in fact, we were also directly controlling the manufacturing of these products at the shop floor level. And we called this product as Billion, as the Flipkart's own brand and marketed by Flipkart completely. And I was taking care of the inventory planning for this particular brand. And majorly, we were trying to put these products into metros to start with. And we had 4 to 5 key locations in India where we wanted to place this product and directly control and ship it through the Flipkart controlled warehouses, so that we can offer a great shipment experience to the customers. And yeah, so this is majorly about the product and my role there.
Excellent. So it says here you were working directly with the CEO. Were you leading teams of others? And if not, have you had, can you quickly detail what your leadership experience has been? If not at this job, then someplace else?
Absolutely. So in this role, majorly this was an individual contribution role, where I was single-handedly responsible to model the entire inventory and the replenishment model at these places. But right after this role, when I joined the logistics startup called Revigo, I think it was my first leadership experience where I was heading the control tower operations for the full truckload business. And so before moving there, I'll just give a very quick background about what that startup did. So it was a relay trucking concept, technology controlled trucking, and a very young startup, just 3-year-old when I had joined in, and it was funded by Warburg Pincus and SAF Partners, and we had around 3,000 trucks, and we were managing the entire 3,000 trucks and 4,500 truck drivers and the utilization of these trucks in India. And my role there was to lead the control tower operations. And as a leader of the control tower, I had a team of 10 assistant managers and 50 other executives under this function. And we were majorly responsible to design SOPs for any en route breakdowns, or you can say any en route stoppages, and to control that entire trip cycle by troubleshooting any kind of a breakage or any kind of a stoppage that has happened en route to any of the trucks in India. So it was like controlling the live operations, live trucking across all 70 places in India and 24/7.
All right, great. And then last year you moved jobs. You moved to Europe. Are you in Europe right now? Were you actually physically, or are you just working for a European division of Oyo Vacation Homes? Can you walk me through that transition? Because it's interesting to me, because you applied last year to business school, and if you applied in round 1, you would have applied before you made this career change. And if you applied in round 2, you would have just made this career change. You would have been a couple months into this new job.
Right.
So can you just quickly tell me about, like, what was the rationale for picking this new job, and what skills do you think it's added to your profile since you applied last year?
Absolutely. So I applied to Darden in the early action round, and I got into Darden in that round itself. And that's when I thought I should switch jobs and learn about a new industry and positively about a different market, because all my experience was in supply chain operations and also very specific to the Indian market. And my role was to be based out of Amsterdam/Denmark. That's where most of the team operates from. But because of the COVID, the transition could not happen. I could not move there, but most of the team controls this entire management, and all the strategic planning and functioning of this particular team happens from India office. And our team sits out of here, but we definitely collaborate with the entire team that sits out of Amsterdam and Denmark. So in terms of learning, yes, learning it's a complete shift of industries, moving from logistics to hospitality, and also in terms of managing operations and moving in from an execution heavy role to a strategic and a planning based role, and also including some bit of execution and collaboration. While the team size is smaller, but I think it is very heavy in terms of taking the overall accountability of the revenue in this function.
And are you leading a team right now?
Yes, I'm actually leading a team of 6 people right now.
Okay, perfect. Great. Okay, so I think that your profile is really interesting, right? Because a year ago you were Mr. Supply Chain, right? You were a supply chain expert. You had worked at, this very famous Indian unicorn company. You had worked at a startup that, even though you said earlier, like, it's an early stage startup, it had $200 million a year of revenue. So for me, that's not early stage. That for me, that's like, it might be young, but it's clearly gaining traction. And so I think it's an interesting thing, because it sounds to me like you took that Darden acceptance as a way for you to say, well, I'm already accepted, so let me just go ahead and try something new in my career. And I think the good news for you is I do think this makes you a stronger candidate for the other schools that you will be applying to this year, because now you're not just Mr. Supply Chain. Now you also have experience with trying to drive revenue in a new industry. And I do think that anytime that you can point to the bottom line of something that you've done in terms of the business, it's going to make you a stronger applicant to business school, because you're not applying to a master's in supply chain, you're applying to business school. And so what I like about your more recent job is that you really are having a deeper impact on the business. And I think one of the things that I would recommend is that right now, when I was looking at your resume, I'm a really big advocate of starting the resume. I know this isn't technically a resume review, but for me, as I'm someone reviewing the resume as you're talking, it's very similar to what an admissions interviewer would be doing at the same, if you during that experience for you. So I think one of the things I would like for you to do, and I recommend this for everyone watching, is start each bullet point with what was that impact. So that way you grab my attention, and then you can tell me how you did it, right? So I'm sitting here and I'm skimming one of your bullet points, and at the very, you tell me like I did this and I did that, and it was a pricing strategy, and then at the end I had a revenue impact of whatever $1 million. And so that I didn't really catch that at first because I was like, yeah, dynamic pricing strategy. Okay, next. And I jumped down to the next bullet point and I hadn't seen that revenue impact. So I think it's going to be especially important for you because since you're coming from the supply chain side of things, I don't want them to look at you and be like, yeah, he's good with numbers, but can he actually do business stuff? Can he actually lead a team? And so one of the things I would also say is that since I do think that the experience that you've gotten from the past year, my throat's dry because I talk all day. Sorry. For the experience that you've gotten in the last year, I would actually want you to emphasize it more on your resume. So one of the things that's important for everyone to think about is that what you devote space to on your resume, that is where the reader is going to focus their time. So I think, look, the stuff that you did in your previous roles in supply chain was really cool and really amazing. But for your candidacy, the thing that makes you a stronger business school candidate is what you've been doing over the past year. So I would urge you to reallocate the space on this page to maybe cut out some of the things you've done in your previous jobs that were maybe more technical, and then add in more details around this stuff that you were telling me about, like, oh, I was able to learn about international stuff, and I was able to learn about a new industry, and I'm driving revenue. Like all of that information, really make sure that you're emphasizing that in the application, because that helps you become, I'm not just Mr. Supply Chain competing against 5 million other supply chain people, but I've also had this really relevant revenue experience. So I think that your background, you said that you're targeting Tuck and Sloan. I think your background is an interesting one for Sloan. You've got the IIT degree. You do have, they love supply chain there. It's a really big part of MIT as a school in general. So I think that I think that could be an interesting one for you. I want to say, you also said that you're looking at Tuck. And I think of all the schools that I think about that you might be interested in applying to, I was interested in why Tuck?
I actually didn't say that. I said Kellogg.
Oh, I apologize. I wrote down Tuck. Okay, well, similar question then. Why? Okay, what is it about Kellogg that you would like to, why are you targeting Kellogg?
So while I'll be very honest, I mean, while a lot of basics about the business and getting into consulting is true for a lot of programs, you can do that at a lot of programs. Specifically, I think among the top programs, Kellogg and the way it does it. I mean, when I connected with the people there, I think it made sense to me. It's a lot more collaborative environment. It's close to Chicago, and it's not again in the heart of the city, but it's still a college town. So that's has been my way of learning. I have been in a residential program in an IIT at a college town in Guwahati, and that's what I think is my way, and I would want to go to such a school.
Okay, excellent. So as you yourself pointed out, Kellogg is a huge teamwork-based school, right? So if you are, I don't think people have to write separate resumes for separate applications, but if you are so inclined, just go through the resume that you submit to them with that teamwork lens. So in general, everyone should be emphasizing their leadership experiences, managing others, getting a team to change direction, influencing perhaps people over whom you don't have formal authority. All of that is important, but especially for Kellogg, if you have been working on teams, helping teams get unstuck, that's something that is really, really strong for Kellogg. So yeah, I think that this is I think my concern with Kellogg would be that Kellogg would look at you and say, well, why Kellogg? Right. And I think just saying like, well, you guys are good with teamwork and you're good at placing people in management consulting, that's a lot of schools. And so I think Kellogg in particular really likes to see, do you love us? Because Kellogg is going to look at this profile and they're going to say, well, he's clearly applying, he's probably applying to HBS and Stanford and MIT as well. And so you really need to make sure in your application that you make Kellogg feel like you really love them, and that you're not just applying to 20 different schools, because they don't know that you're only applying to MIT and Kellogg, right? So they're probably assuming that you're applying to several other schools. And so as a result, I would just make sure that in order for you, because I've seen people get rejected by Kellogg who then get into Harvard. And Kellogg will reject people, and they, I asked one of their admissions officers about this once at an admissions conference, and she was like, no, of course we don't do that. But I see it happen every year. I see people get rejected from Kellogg, get into Wharton, rejected from Kellogg, get into Stanford. So just realize that Kellogg, in my opinion, sometimes may look at a candidate who's very strong and say, well, they're probably not going to come here if we let them in. So if you do apply to Kellogg, I would be extra sure to show them like exactly why you love them, exactly which classes, be really ready to talk about what that experience is going to do for you, because otherwise I think they might worry that you're not really into them.
I think last year it was really close. I did apply to Kellogg and I was put on wait list and did not hear from them until the very end of the last round. So I'm actually a reapplicant there.
Oh, I didn't know that. I thought you said, okay, because you applied early to Darden, I assumed that you had not applied anywhere else. Okay. So yes, excellent. So you've already shown them that you love them. And so I think Kellogg could work out for you then this year.
Yeah.
All right, excellent. So now we are going to move on to Abhinav.
Hey, Maria.
Excellent. Hi. Okay, so why don't you go ahead and quickly introduce yourself and what you've been doing the past 5 years.
Yeah. So, hi, I'm Abhinav. I am a mechanical engineer graduate from IIIT Jabalpur. I graduated in 2016, and after that, I moved on to into entrepreneurship, and I started one of my startups. So I was always interested in building my own things, and I had one of my neighbor who was deaf, so I knew the challenges a deaf person faces. So I always thought that it would be really great if I could do something, I could build something to solve some of those issues. So during my engineering, I worked on a hobby project, which was an alternative communication device for deaf people. And then after my engineering, I moved on to starting my own startup where I worked on commercializing this device, which is called Voice. And after that, I have raised a fund in mix of equity and grants, developed the device starting from idea to actually launched it. And right now we are working with different organizations who employ deaf people. And we are working with them to create job opportunities where a deaf person can perform as good as any other person. And other than that, in that particular startup, we are right now we are also working on developing Google Translate engine for sign language. So basically, this engine will be able to convert text into sign language and will also be able to convert sign into text. So that's about one of my startup. And I was also very much inclined towards Clean India mission of Indian Prime Minister, and did some of the activities during my college related to that. And then I somehow got opportunity to build a product related to that, which then got really good traction. And I started another company which has been grown to $2 million ARR right now, and we employ more than 150 people. And during this process, I have also got 3 patents, to have 3 patents published, 2 granted. So yeah. And during my college also, I was involved in lots of different extracurricular activities. I was chosen as a student senate member continuously, and involved in media and PR, student counseling services, academic helping, and lots of other different extracurricular activities.
Awesome. So I have one question. So you've got 2 startups, right? One is the one that's creating solutions to help the deaf or the hearing impaired. And then the other is this waste management startup. Where do you split your time evenly between the 2, or is one your primary focus and the other is more on the side? Can you just quickly give me a sense of that?
Yeah, sure. So I am I'm working as CEO in one of the startup where Sonant, where we develop solution for deaf people. So it's like 60% of my time put on that, and so right now 40% of my time I put on another startup which is into solid waste management.
Yes.
So,
Okay. So it's 60-40 is basically you're spending 60. Okay. Because I was going to say if one of them is, say, 80% of your time and the other one is just sort of more on the side, you may want to think about making that clear in the resume. So that way I don't get confused as a reader, like, wait, he's got 2 full-time jobs. Which one is it? So you may even want to proactively put on the resume something like, I spend 60%. I'm an entrepreneur. I tend to on resumes tell people, like, don't bother with putting a summary of qualifications or whatever, because that's what the resume is, your summary of qualifications. So don't say, here's a page that's going to show you my summary of qualifications, and then follow it with the qualifications. But I think in your case, I would recommend putting it on your resume, because it's not common for entrepreneurs to be simultaneously working on 2 companies in such different, hearing impaired solutions and solid waste management are, call me crazy, they're kind of different. And so what I would say is I would put at the top of your resume. And by the way, your resume is very beautiful. It's one of these artistically designed resumes with, the columns. And I would really urge you to consider using a more standard resume format, not only because that's what admissions officers are used to seeing, and so it's easier for them to find the information they're looking for, but it's going to give you a lot more room to talk about these experiences. Because right now when you were talking, I'm looking at this resume and, there's some interesting stuff. You started talking about all kinds of things that I did not see on the resume that are impressive. And you can't, because you don't have room on the resume, because you have it like on these different sides and you've got the colors, and take off the picture too. In the US, we don't do pictures. And so, like you're like, oh yeah, we're doing something with Google Translate, and so I would, as a side note, I would say at the top of your resume, I would want to see like a summary. I'm currently an entrepreneur who spends 60% of my time on this and 40% of my time on this one, just so that way, when I look at it, I'm like, wait, he has this full-time job, but wait, he's got another full-time job, and is one, because sometimes people will do like they have their main job, and then on the side, like on weekends, they might have a side project. And so that's very different. In those cases, I recommend if you are someone who on the side is helping a startup, or you have your own startup on the side, I usually recommend pulling that out of work experience and sticking it near the bottom under like the other category, just because you don't want to give the reader the false impression that maybe you have 2 full-time jobs at once, or like you're splitting your time between them. So for those of you who have like the pet project on weekends or evenings, make sure that you pull that out of work experience. So that way I as an admissions reader don't get really sort of confused and start asking questions, because you don't want any moment of them being like, what? Any moment like that, try to get rid of it. So I would definitely make sure that you rework this resume to highlight a lot more of these accomplishments. I think that this is a really interesting profile, because you've been successful in both startups. Now, the one for the hearing impaired, you say that you've raised funding. That's the one you've been working on longer. Does that have, I apologize if I missed this, what is sort of the revenue? I don't want exact numbers, but is it making money right now, or is it still in the R&D phase?
Yeah, it's making money, but it's not been profitable as of now. Okay. So we were hit bad by COVID, but yeah, it's making revenue.
Got it. And so finally, your career goal is to continue in entrepreneurship, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So those schools that you're applying to are Sloan, Stanford, INSEAD, and Babson. I think Sloan is an interesting one for you. Stanford is really hard for everyone, but it's a good, you might as well throw in your shot, because Stanford's motto is change lives, change organizations, change the world. And I tell people, like, that's not just like empty words that they throw on a brochure for the fun of it. Like, they really believe this, and they really try to find people who have done that. So most people applying can say, well, I've changed a couple of lives here and there. I was a tutor, I was a mentor, I sponsored a high school student and helped them pass their exams. Most people can say, well, I've changed lives. Changing organizations is the next sort of level of scrutiny, and that's where things start to get more competitive, right? If you are applying to Stanford and you have, you work for a company and you said, look, guys, we need to we need to completely launch in a new direction, or we need to shut down this one division over here and close this warehouse and do that. Like, if that's what you've done and you can point to that level of impact, that's the next level. And then changing the world is obviously a tall order. So they don't expect everyone to be like changing the world, but they are looking for people who are on their way to trying to change the world. And so I think you've started to do that with this, with both of your startups. I think it's kind of funny that the second one that you started more recently is currently the more financially successful. But I think that's also because entrepreneurship is, you learn a lot the first time around, and then you're like, oh yeah, I'm not going to make those mistakes again. On your school list, I would say I don't know that INSEAD would necessarily be the best fit for you. It's a shorter program. I don't know that they're super entrepreneurial, and INSEAD really does look for people who have significant international experience. That's sort of like the definition of what they look for. Like, they are the global business school. And so I'm a little concerned that they will say, look, we love this guy, but we're not the right fit for him. Like, we're the global business school. We're the one who wants people, we're the school that wants people who speak 4 languages and have lived 2 years overseas and have done all this stuff. So I think I would perhaps remove INSEAD. And I'm trying to think if there are any, Berkeley is such a hard one to get into because it's a small class. But if you're interested in sustainability, I should have asked this at the beginning. In terms of your 2 startups, is it that you want to go to business school to grow the solid waste management startup, or you want to go to business to grow both of them, or do you want to start several new startups?
I think I feel that in solid waste management, I have seen some dead blocks. So that's where I think that getting a really good MBA is going to help me grow it exponentially. So that's the main purpose of getting an MBA.
It certainly seems like it's the one that's getting more traction. So I think that's a great way to go. So what I would say is also look at programs that have good sustainability practices. So there are some programs out there that do both entrepreneurship and sustainability. And so I think that some of them, you have to really dig into the class lists, because one school might say we have sustainability and another school might say it, and then you dig into the class lists and it's completely different. But you may want to consider, I would look maybe into Berkeley Haas. Duke has a lot of good they have something called the Edge Center, which is, they actually have 2 different sustainability related majors. One is sort of general sustainable business, and the other is sustainability finance, which is specific to people who want to invest in sustainable ventures. So I think in your case, look, I think Babson would take you in a heartbeat. So I would sort of deprioritize applying there now. Right now, like, if you're in the middle of getting ready for these round 2 applications, prioritize Sloan and Stanford. Maybe look into like a Haas or Duke. Throw one into HBS. You never know. It's a crazy year, y'all. Just so you guys know, like, it is because of COVID and people losing their jobs, there are some of the highest application volumes ever. So it's normally a crapshoot to apply to a place like Stanford or Harvard. It's going to be even harder this year. We just had them on the last session, and of course they didn't tell me any numbers, and I didn't expect them to. But some of the schools who are reporting increases, INSEAD, in fact, over the summer reported a 57% increase in applicants. I think they're the extreme, but just so you guys know. But why not throw in one of those? In fact, you might even want to, I was going to say the biotech, if you were doing the hearing impaired one, Harvard has like that joint master's degree with engineering, but it sounds to me like you're more interested in the pure entrepreneurship angle of it. So yes. And also, yeah, I was going to say another thing you might want to think about is applying to the STEM program. So as many of you may know, the typical MBA, if you graduate with just a plain MBA from a US business school, current immigration policy in the US, which is terrible, is that you only get to stay for 1 year until you need to find an employer who will sponsor your visa. If you apply from a program that is STEM designated, and more schools are offering this, so it's not as big of a difference as it used to be, but that will allow you to stay in the US for 3 years afterwards. So in case you did want to say, well, you know what, maybe I want to stay in the US for a year or 2 after I graduate and try to get some VC funding from US-based investors, you may want to also look at a program like that too, a program that has a STEM component.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I think I covered everything. I'm excited for your waste recycling. The world needs waste recycling. They don't need people like me. Okay. So yeah, overall strong profile. Apply to a bunch of schools, and I would say take INSEAD out and then apply to Babson at the end. All right, excellent. So next we move on to Surya.
Okay. Hi, Maria. Hi, everyone.
Hi. Okay, so Surya, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure. So I'm from Hyderabad, and I'm trained as an electronics and communication engineer from an Indian university in Hyderabad. So after graduating, I worked for a year in a software company to sort of, earn some money to support my education. So I was always interested in working in the social impact space. I wanted to get into the government work as a civil servant. So in the Indian civil services, you need to apply for an examination. It's a very competitive examination. So I spent 2.5 years preparing for that full time after my first year stint at a software company. I made it to the interview, the final stage, but couldn't crack it. So I moved back to my hometown and I started working with a think tank. I wanted to continue in the social impact space. So at the think tank, I was working on researching on policy alternatives and advocating to government officials. From there, I moved to MIT-based research organization. I worked in Delhi, one of their Indian offices is in Delhi. So there, my role was to advocate policy reforms, which are based on evidence. So it's called JPAL, Poverty Action Lab. So Professors Abhijit Banerjee and Esther Duflo, they were awarded the Nobel last year. So had an opportunity to work with them on evaluating a few government programs and finding out what impact they had on the poor people. And based on the findings, advocated them to the different departments across the government. Currently, I work with a consulting firm in Mumbai where I work with corporates, social enterprises, impact investors, different stakeholders on advising them on how to maximize their impact by evaluating the impact of their social investments, as well as building strategies to ensure that the right beneficiaries get the programs. And my post-MBA plan is to continue in the nonprofit space. Sorry. Maria, you wanted to say something? Should I continue?
Okay, excellent. Oh, no, that's fine. I think that's all I just wanted to sort of hear your background in your words. Okay, so your background up until now has been, you did sort of poverty alleviation. You've been sort of in the think tank public sector, specifically the poverty space. And now for the past sort of year and a half, you switched a little bit now. It sounds like you're doing more like are you working with companies to help ascertain the strength of their, okay. So
I work with a consulting firm. Yeah.
Go.
No, I think I work with a
Perfect.
consulting
And so,
firm,
but your clients in this consulting firm. Okay. Oh, sorry. I just had a weird thing with the sound. I apologize. The sound just doubled for me. So you're working with corporations as your clients. You're not working with the government as your client. Okay. So that's good, because I think, post MBA, a common path for folks in your shoes would be to take a sort of social enterprise consulting role. And so the fact that you're already in that space a little bit, I think you're a stronger candidate this year than you would have been a year ago when you just had the think tank experience and the policy research experience, right? Because one of the issues or one of the challenges with people who work in policy or research is that it's really hard to demonstrate impact, right? You will spend 100 hours a week running some sort of statistical analysis about poverty levels and income levels and R-squareds and all kinds of crazy stuff like that. But at the end of the day, it's really hard for you to say, like, I helped 2,000 people get out of poverty. Like, here's the proof. And so I think one of the benefits for you is that this more recent job that you've had, it is working more directly with companies. You've actually said, I've boosted the revenues by fostering relations with clientele. Again, as I told Aman earlier, move that to the front. From the very front of that bullet point is, I'm increasing the revenues pretty dramatically you've had a really big impact on your company. But when you started that bullet point on the resume with, well, I'm heading this business unit for this section of India, I'm like, okay. But then I'm like, oh my God, wait a minute, boosted revenues by a huge percentage. That's great. So start with that, because this is the sort of impact that a business school is going to be far more interested in than some research paper you did that maybe is sitting on a shelf right now collecting dust, as for all we know. So again, as with what I said to Aman, I would also try to, even though you've only had this job for a year and a half, as opposed to your other jobs that you've had in the past, you might want to expand how much space on the page you devote to it, because this experience to me seems a lot more relevant to a business school. Not that your previous experience isn't relevant, but it would be very, very difficult for you to have gotten in a year ago or a year and a half ago. So I would really expand and devote more space to, like, I've worked with 5 different corporations. I'm doing that, like, really, really try to build out this part, because you are doing consulting, you are working with big name companies, which is going to be beneficial when I'm looking at this profile from the admissions angle, and I'm thinking, okay, is this person going to get a job in impact consulting? Well, you've already done it. So my comfort level now with you saying, well, this is what I want to do after, but my comfort level is now way higher. I'm not like, oh, gee, I don't know, are they going to take him? And then the other thing, sort of along those same lines, for the bullet points that you do keep in for your previous jobs, try to, I know it's so hard because it's research, think tanky stuff, but if there's any sort of impact, if any of these ideas that you came up with or researched got implemented, or if anything like that, and maybe you're like, Maria, I have no idea how many poor people are now out of poverty because of if you can even point to internal impact, right? So maybe you have, like, I have no idea how many people are no longer in poverty, but internally, maybe I convinced the head of the think tank that we should start looking at food security as a new, whatever, a new area to research. So you can also show, if you can't show necessarily external impact, you can always try to show internal impact. And for those of you watching who may be early in your careers, if you don't have any internal impact, start now. Start trying to get that experience now, so that when you apply to business school in a couple of years, you'll be in a stronger position. You are retaking the GMAT, which is great, because I'm a little concerned about, the 680 is low. And so I do think that will be, retaking that GMAT is going to be pretty important. For your school selections, again, with INSEAD's a tough one. I do think Oxford will like this story. Oxford is, first of all, they're a 1-year program, so they are more open to people who are more seasoned or older, because they are a 1-year program. They do have a strong social enterprise bent. And so I think if you can get that GMAT up, I think of the schools on this list, I think Oxford is going to be probably your best bet if I had to pick, followed by Yale. I think one of the challenges that you have is that you've been working for a long time, but your current job is, you've only had that for a year and a half, and so you're on this weird cusp of you've only had like a year and a half of the consulting experience, but you're so old. That's not right, Maria. I say this and I'm like in my mid 40s, so I shouldn't talk about being old, but you're not. If you had graduated from college like 3 years ago or 5 years ago, I would say, you know what, wait another year, get more of these wins under your belt in the consulting space, and then apply, because then you're going to have those accomplishments that are going to be putting you, they're going to be comparing you against all the other people doing social enterprise consulting. And so, you've been there for a year and a half and you've had accomplishments, but there might be people who have been doing this for 5 years who have had even more accomplishments. So I think in terms of schools, I am a little concerned about Stanford, Haas, Booth, Kellogg, how they're going to, I don't know that they would be like super into this profile necessarily, but I think maybe you could look at a Tuck, for example. That's a good school. They are also amongst sort of the top schools in my experience. They're the ones who are sort of the most open to people who have had these paths that aren't straight lines. I've had a lot of success with getting non-traditional candidates with, you look at the story and you're like, what, you did this and then you bounced to this and then you did something else. And I don't know, how does it all come together? Tuck, in my experience, has been the most open to those to those stories. And they also have, I believe, a really strong track record with social enterprise as well. So in terms of the top programs, if you can get that GMAT up, I would look at some of those. I'm trying to think of who are the other big social enterprise ones. Yeah, definitely. I would look at Tuck and Kellogg. I think you could give a try. But of the schools on this list, I see Oxford as your best bet as of now.
Yeah, I mean, just an update. I know, Stanford is a very difficult one, but there's also this fellowship called Reliance Fellowship, which I was successful in getting shortlisted.
Oh, great.
So I'm one of the top 50.
Okay.
So anyways, planning to apply. Try my best.
Yeah, no. I mean, you should definitely try. And I actually had a client in the past who got in with the Reliance Fellowship. The good news is his test scores were a little bit on the lower side because the impact was so much higher. You know what I mean? Like in terms of that leadership, changing lives, changing organizations, changing the world. This person had definitely shown the latter, and so they were willing to. I believe that they were willing to overlook what would otherwise be considered a low GMAT score. So that's good news for you. But again, I would really point to, since we know that Stanford's motto is change lives, change organizations, change the world, like really changing this resume to point to what has that impact been? What change have you been able to drive wherever possible in order to really demonstrate that you're what they're looking for? But congratulations on being shortlisted for that. It's a pretty.
Yeah, thanks, Maria.
Okay. So I think we've got, how much? We've got 10 minutes left. Abhijit, I don't know if Abhijit's still here. Okay. So what I think I'm going to do is, we've got about 10 minutes left. So what I'm going to do is we've got 9 minutes left. Thanks, Kirsty. I'm going to allow each of you to ask, if you've got one quick question of me, I will answer it before we head out. So I'm going to go in the order in which we did these before. So Aman, what question can I answer for you?
I think you answered a lot of questions. I actually also wanted to check how would be Booth in terms of candidacy, because what my research says as of now, they're a very academic focused school. A lot of emphasis on data heavy and data crunching roles and those kind of things. It does intersect a bit with my profile, with my work. But in terms of again,
so I think Booth. I think my concern with your candidacy is that it's so funny because people are measured against other people in their buckets, as I think I said earlier. So when I look at IIT, working at Flipkart, your GMAT's at 730. Which for Surya would be a great GMAT. But for you, since you're being compared against all the other IIT people who have worked for unicorns, it's a bit of a crapshoot between like, okay, well, we've got how many people from Flipkart or the other Indian unicorns apply every year? It's a lot. So I would love to see that GMAT a little bit higher, but I know that's a tall order because I know the application deadlines are coming soon. But I do think that Booth will be open to your analytical background. Booth in particular loves to see stories of people who have convinced others through data. So it seems to me like you're going to have a lot of those stories to share. Right. So I think you should go for it. Abhinav, was there a question for you that I can answer?
Yeah. So would you suggest any good 1-year MBA program which might suit to my profile?
I'm trying to think because there are 1-year programs that are technology-based, like the tech MBAs, both Cornell and NYU have those programs. Those are, but those are, when they say tech, they don't mean all tech. They probably mean primarily software. They recruit people, they send people to Amazon and what have you, Microsoft. Kellogg has a 1-year MBA. Maybe you should apply to that one because as an entrepreneur, you would be, you want to get back out there quickly. Yeah. You might not want to spend 2 years while you've got these businesses that you want to grow. Unfortunately, there's another program that I think the deadline was like last week. It's Columbia J-Term, which is you people start in January. They don't get a summer internship and they study the whole way through, but they graduate in a year and a half. But I think the deadline for that one may have been, you might want to look that one up, but I think it was like October 4th, sorry. But yeah, so in terms of the one-year programs in the US, I would look at, in your case, at the Kellogg 1 year. I think that's going to be great. Cornell also has a 1-year MBA program, but you want to check, they have weird admissions requirements. Like sometimes they want people who already have master's degrees, which is kind of a pain. You're too young for the MSX program at Stanford. MSX is a 1-year program, as you're nodding, so I guess you're familiar with it. They look for people who have at least 8 years of experience. Okay, but yeah, Kellogg 1 year could be a great one for you, for sure. All right, Surya, question for you.
Yeah, so as I plan to work in the nonprofit space, even after the MBA, I think scholarship is something which would be very helpful for me. Do you have any suggestions on how I can improve my chances of getting a scholarship? I mean, maybe at Tuck or maybe at the schools you suggested.
So the best, a lot of times, so some financial aid is need-based, right? So they're just going to look at how much money you've made in the past, how much money you have, and they're going to say, whoa, there's a gap, and so we should pony up some money for that. But the more merit-based scholarships, basically, if the financial part is important to you, to put it plainly, I would apply to lower ranked programs, because what programs use scholarships for is to say, well, we don't want to lose this guy to that competing school, right? When 20 years from now, this guy is like the minister of whatever for India, we don't want it to say, and he's a graduate of our competitor's school. We want him to say he's a graduate of Emory Guazetta, right? And so if the payment portion is very important to you, I would definitely consider some schools that may be a little bit lower in the rankings, but can still get you where you need to go, right? Emory, I think, sends a ton of people. I just mentioned Emory off the top of my head, but they send a ton of people into consulting. And I think they might be more likely to try to pull you away. And also, like, I don't mean to put a ton of pressure on you for the GMAT, but having a GMAT that is considerably above a school's average is also a big reason why sometimes people get scholarship offers, because the schools are like, boom, this person is going to increase our average, right? That average score that everyone obsesses over, and US News and World Report makes, the average GMAT is really important. So if you can help pull up that average, a school is going to be more likely to want to pull you in, and they might sweeten the pot with some money. Okay. Well, sure. So I think that's everything. I'm speaking to a faceless, a headless ghost. Kirsty, is it okay if I can end it? Thank you. I was just going to say, we finished. Abhijit, you didn't think there's a GMAT club moderator who I always give heart attacks to, because I always go over time. And look, I did it. We're on time. We ended early. We covered everything. So thank you so much, everyone. Thanks, guys. I hope this was useful for you. And please keep me posted on how things go. And yeah, I will see everyone else here back in about 15 minutes for our next session. Thank you.
Thanks, Maria.
Thank you.